Hey, Slim here, and let's do a little experiment.
Hey boys, come here. A bag of marshmallows. But guess what? There's only one left. Who should get it?
Me!
Who deserves it? Alright, here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to drop it in the middle, and whoever gets it wins. Go!
Was that fair? I mean, survival of the fittest, right? I mean, what about us boils up and says, that's not fair. You can't do that. That's a terrible dad. There's something inside of us that says something isn't fair, something is fair. And what that feeling is a feeling of justice. And Proverbs says to be wise, to live a life of wisdom, you have to actually deeply care about what's right and wrong in this world, and that's called justice. God says the righteous care about justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern. And so you are not wise unless you are living a life that is intentionally, passionately caring about justice. I think when we think of justice, a lot of times we may think of lady justice and balancing the scales. And so I think a lot of times we think of it of fairness. We think of more of like the legal aspect of having a judge issue justice out. But it's more than weighing the scales. Justice is actually about, it's like this Hebrew word called shalom. And that's the word for peace. Justice is about restoring the whole world to its natural shalom, the way God has intended it to be. And so let's take this clay pot here. It is in its shalom. It's made the way it's supposed to be. And so in the way it's supposed to be, think of your neighborhood. Your neighborhood should be in its shalom. Your community and your city is all running the way it needs to be. But what happens when that neighborhood fractures and breaks, and when brokenness sets into the world? All this brokenness, all this injustice, I mean, the world's broken. There are fractures, there are breaks, there's racism, there's sex trafficking, there's poverty. Someone has to make it right, but who does that? Who is God calling to administer justice, to stick up for the little guy, to feed the hungry? And it's clear He's calling you. He's calling me. He tells us in Proverbs to do not say to your neighbor, come back later, I'll give it to you tomorrow. To offer something to your neighbor and to say, no, I don't have time for you today, I'll come back tomorrow. He's saying do it now. He's saying it's on you. And then 11:10 it says, when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. I love that. When the righteous prosper, the whole city rejoices because of that. And that word there for righteous is, sometimes we don't like that word. Someone's being self-righteous and overly righteous or righteous anger. That word there is actually a Hebrew word called tzaddik. And that tzaddik is the person who disadvantages themselves for the sake of the whole community around them. Who says, I want to put the whole community ahead of me before I serve my own needs. And so when that person actually rises up and gets into a position of honor and excels, the whole community doesn't resent them and say, man, how come he's there? No, the whole community, the whole city actually looks to them and says, yes, finally someone's excelling and sticking up for the little guy, because that's the righteous, and that's what the beautiful thing that God's calling us to be. So justice is ultimately about restoring the world to its ultimate shalom, its ultimate peace, and taking this brokenness that's all around us, the broken city, the broken families, the broken homes, the brokenness that's in you and me, and ultimate justice is going about and trying to restore the world, to put it piece back together, and restore it to its ultimate beauty of what God intended it to be. Because if a person has grasped the meaning of God's grace, he will do justice. Because he actually sees how poor he actually was and how in need he actually was, and God gave grace to him, and God gave justice to him and poured out His wrath on someone else and gave him grace. And so Jesus was the ultimate tzaddik at the cost to Himself, advanced His community, advanced His city, and at the ultimate cost to Himself, at His death, put our needs ahead of His own. And so when we see that Jesus is all about justice and all about sticking up for those who desperately need it, that turns us to actually seek justice in this city of Waco, in your own community, in your own household, to actually give generously, to love generously, and to seek justice. So today, because of what Jesus has done, give justice.